So, what's next? Figuring out what's ahead in this changing world is pretty much impossible. There's too many breaking updates for us to digest and too few sources of information that we honestly trust. Last week I read tons of articles across the spectrum of perspectives on pandemic and policy. And as I scrolled through my feed, I got attacked by Facebook posts from people going even further on both sides of opinion. And at the end of it all, my head and my heart were exhausted. We are all dealing with the stress of not knowing what's next, not just with this pandemic, but with our families and our jobs, our friendships and our finances as well. We don't know what's coming next in our lives. We can't see what the future holds, and that uncertainty can be crippling and confusing. This week the Gospels ask us this question: what will we do when we don't understand what God's doing? In the past week, while listening on the Dwell app to the 30-day plan through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as they tell the history of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, we found the disciples near the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And they're confused about what Jesus is doing. We see this in the book of Mark, chapter 4, verse 10. And when Jesus was alone, those around him with the 12 asked him about the parables. Jesus often taught in parables, using stories of everyday life to share heavenly wisdom. And the beauty of the parables wasn't that they were clear and easy to understand, but actually the opposite. Although they seemed so simple on the surface, their true meaning was hidden deeper down, and it was difficult to perceive on your own. Parables reflect what we experience in our everyday life. There's always more going on than what we can see, because God is always at work behind the scenes and beneath the surface. And like the parables, we can't often see or understand what God is up to, especially when it's difficult and painful. Jesus responds to the disciples in verse 11 this way: "To you has been given the secret of the kingdom of God, but for those outside, everything is in parables." In the way of Jesus, God uses the uncertainty of life to lead us to Him. Just like with the hidden meaning in the parables, we won't see, understand, or be transformed by Jesus' hidden work in our lives unless we're looking to Him as the one who brings beauty out of brokenness and wholeness out of pain. If we fix our eyes on the problems around us and the pain in us, we'll get stuck in the confusion and in the unknown of life. But if we fix our eyes on Jesus, taking Him at His word and acting on it, even when we don't know where it will lead us, that's when we step into the behind-the-scenes work that God is doing in us and through us. For all of us, this week will be another week lacking clarity. This week will be another one abounding in the unknown. We're not going to get all of our questions answered about what's next. We're not going to fully figure out and enjoy a new normal for our lives. And as we don't understand what God is doing in the midst of our changing world and in the highs and the lows of our families, our work, and ourselves, let's fix our eyes on Jesus. Let's bring our questions to Him and ask Him to give us wisdom. Let's listen to and obey His word, even when we don't see how obedience is best. And let's step into the work that God is doing here. If you haven't started listening to the Gospels on the Dwell app, today is a great day to get started. You can download your free account of Dwell, courtesy of Nona Church, by following the link below. And if you've been listening to the Gospels through Dwell, I'd love to know, what parable have you heard from Jesus that has intrigued or challenged you? Let us know in the comments below. And this week, let's not get lost in the unknown of what's next or of what God's doing in our lives. Let's fix our eyes on our God, who is always in control and is always at work. Let's listen to and obey His word so that we might join in on what He's doing. I'll see you next week for our next episode of the Dwell Devotional. Be blessed.